Welcome to the Beginner's Guide to ACC for Audiologists. We'll begin with our karakia and then we'll get started. Whaia, whaia, whaia te tika, whaia te pono, whaia te aroha, mo te oranga tangata, kia puta ki te whaiau, ki te ao marama, homie, huie, tae kie. So kia ora koutou, I'm Cody Bedford. I'm the health partner for the audiology sector and a few others. I'll hand over to my colleague Ben Pennicott to introduce himself, and a few others will follow. Ben.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ben Pennicott, and I am the portfolio advisor in the allied health space. So I look after the audiology service, and Cody and I co-manage the audiology inbox together. And I'll pass over to Kelly.
Kia ora everyone, my name's Kelly Ryan and I'm a team leader in the cover assessment space at ACC. And I'll pass back to Cody.
Thanks for that, Ben and Kelly. We've also got Maggie Robson and Donna Anderson, our question masters in the chat. So thank you so much for being here today, and Emma, our wonderful comms person, for helping us out with this presentation. So I'd like to say a big thank you to you all for taking time out of your busy days. It's really appreciated that you're here, and we hope you get some good information out of this session today. This is a new webinar format we've developed as part of our new resources for providers, so we'd really like your feedback. The link is going in the chat now and we'll repost it again at the end. This is a beginner's guide to ACC, so an overview covering the basics is a bit of a foundation. Then we plan to delve deeper into different topics in future webinars. Please stay on mute for this webinar. We do have quite a large crowd today. Questions that have been asked in registration will hopefully be covered within the content of the presentation, and we'll have some time at the end of the sections to go back and answer some questions. So please send any questions that you have along the way to our questions at ACC, if you can see them there. A reminder that this webinar is being recorded to go up on our website, and you'll get the slide deck sent to you with all the relevant links and information for resources. So on the agenda today, we have a few of the basics for working with ACC as an audiologist. As mentioned before, this webinar is recorded and will be sent out after the session along with links and resources, which we'll cover in the final sections. So a little bit about ACC. As you'll be aware, healthcare looks a little different in New Zealand from other countries. When someone gets injured as a result of an accident, they come to ACC for support. So we are a Crown entity and we provide no-fault cover as a scheme. ACC provides the same access to treatment for all New Zealanders and our visitors. So what do? In summary, we try to help prevent injuries, provide rehabilitation, and provide financial support to people injured in accidents. To do this, we partner with providers like yourself to help our clients recover. And how does that all get funded? So we all pay for each other to keep the ACC scheme running. This is funded by levies from our motorists, our workers, and businesses, and it's partly government funded for our non-earners and our visitors to New Zealand. I'm now going to pass over to Kelly to cover off our next section. Thanks, Kelly.
Thanks, Cody. So I'm going to be talking about cover and causation. So what is cover? Cover really means whether we can accept a claim and provide the treatment and supports needed. The legislation tells us what we can and can't do, and often how much we can contribute to the costs. So ACC covers personal injuries, which include physical injuries, treatment injuries, mental injuries, and gradual work-related injuries. There are 3 different types of injuries ACC can consider hearing loss under. So we can consider occupational noise-induced hearing loss, which is our most common. We can consider hearing loss caused by trauma or hearing loss caused by a treatment injury. Regardless of the type of injury, to receive cover and supports for hearing loss, clients need to meet the 5% legislative threshold. So occupational noise-induced hearing loss is hearing loss caused by prolonged exposure to noise over a number of years in a paid work environment within New Zealand. Because these are work-related gradual process claims, there's no specific date of injury. We need you to list this as the date of the client's hearing test and consultation. If these dates differ, this may impact your invoicing. So trauma claims are personal injury caused by accident claims. This is an example of a claim caused by an accident. So a tympanic membrane perforation caused by jumping into a pool. These may or may not include loss of hearing. An example of a treatment injury. So treatment injury claims are injuries caused by treatment or a failure to diagnose by a registered health professional. For example, a tumor on the right side of the head that was missed on a scan, causing right-sided hearing loss. ACC needs to assess all information relating to treatment injury prior to cover being approved as a treatment injury. And I'm going to pass over to Ben to talk about claim lodgement.
Thanks, Kelly. So Kelly's spoken about what the different types of claims are. So since the 1st of June 2022, audiologists have been able to lodge occupational noise-induced hearing loss claims or ANIL claims. And so to lodge a claim, you'd need to complete an ACC 45 form. When you're completing it, please make sure that the patient's details are all complete and accurate so that we can match their correct claim to their correct client. So when we receive the ACC 45, this initiates claim lodgement. However, for the claim to progress any further, all hearing loss information must be sent into ACC. So this includes the ACC 612, the ACC 724, and please also include any other audiograms or hearing tests that they may have had. If we don't receive this information, we cannot progress the client's claim any further. And a key thing to note is that clients can only have one claim for occupational noise-induced hearing loss. So please make sure you check with them to see if they've already had or have ever had a claim lodged with ACC for hearing loss. So these claims can either be accepted or a declined claim. So the lodgement process. This begins with the diagnostic testing and can be completed by you without any prior approval from ACC. So you'd also need to complete the NZAS loss of hearing calculations and complete the ACC 612 audiometric report. So if the threshold is over 5%, you would then lodge an ACC 45 injury claim form. The ACC 724 hearing loss questionnaire is also completed, and you send all these through with all the information electronically to our team at the dunedin.hearingloss@acc.co.nz. You don't need to worry about writing that email down. All the contact details mentioned in this webinar will be summarised and provided for you at the end. And just a hot tip for invoicing, it's best to do this electronically and there's more on this to come soon. So some claims are unlikely to meet cover criteria, and listed are examples of ones that are likely not to be covered as they do not fit within legislation. So if the patient's hearing loss is not due to an accident, which means it's not ACC related, please refer them on to another funding stream, e.g. Te Whare Ora, for age-related hearing loss. Right, with the forms, I'll run through those now, and they need to be completed and sent into ACC, and the starting one is this one here, the initiating document, the ACC 45. So please ensure you fill in the relevant sections, which will allow the claim to process smoothly. So we've highlighted a few here, some of these critical ones. In particular to note, on the top right-hand side, you can see it says side. So you can select left, right, or bilateral. You'll also see that there's another red highlighted box underneath that. Please only use that when you really do not need us to call you back if there's a genuine need for that. Further reminder, the date of accident is the date that you assess the client and lodge the claim. So please remember to add in your vendor ID and your provider ID. If we don't have this information, it may delay the claim processing. So the injury description also needs to reflect the accident or event. So for example, ANIL, you can put that down, but please do not refer to the ACC 724 as this will also delay the claim being processed. So one of the other key forms is the ACC 612. So with this, all sections need to be completed, and there are also a few key things to consider / check as listed here on the left. So check if there's any prior denial claims, that all client details are correct. Also, testing all the mandatory frequencies is required. There have been the odd occasion where the frequency was missed, requiring a retest. So if all the documentation, if there are any previous hearing loss assessments or hearing loss treatment records, please include these when you send it in. So this form was actually updated in April 2022 and now asks for further client information. So that's client email and the client contact number. So if you could please include those. So if a patient has already had a previously declined claim, but has had further noise exposure, a new claim needs to be lodged if they want it to be reassessed. So you can't send in a new ACC 612 on that declined claim. It needs to be a new claim. So this will mean you'll need to complete a new ACC 45 and a new ACC 612. So that's only if the client has had further noise exposure. If a client's had a previously declined claim and there's been no further occupational noise exposure, you'd need to have a conversation with them and explain to the client that this will be declined as nothing has changed from an occupational noise exposure aspect. And that's obviously what ACC covers. So there's no need to lodge this claim in this instance, as long as your client has understood from your conversation and that there would not be a positive outcome for them lodging the claim. So the other form that needs to be sent in as well is the ACC 724, which is the hearing loss questionnaire. So the patient will complete this. If they have time, this is best done in the clinic before leaving. And as you can see, the working dates can be approximate as we're looking at the total duration. And it's best to send this through electronically, as I'll explain to do very soon, how to do that. So read codes, as you can see here, there are 7 diagnoses that you're able to lodge. We've covered off the denial, which is the F5812 code. And we will now look at the other diagnoses, which are trauma related. So there are 2 ways to lodge a trauma claim. Either as a new claim, which is on an ACC 45, you need to complete that and then send it through electronically to us, or alternatively, add it as an additional diagnosis to an existing claim. So for example, a GP has lodged a claim and then referred the client through to you. So in this case, you would electronically send us through the documents to confirm that there is an additional diagnosis and request ACC to add it as an additional diagnosis to the existing claim. So the key thing here is that you do not send in a new ACC 45 if the claim has already been lodged. You're just going to ask for an additional diagnosis in this case. So what I'll do now is I'll pass over to Cody, who's going to chat to you about decision making.
Kia ora, Ben. So decision making. ACC internal processes have been looked at with the aim to reduce our cover decision timeframes. So a triage system was set up for the purpose of reducing those cover timeframes and ensuring that clients get their hearing aids in a reasonable time. Whilst there are no specific set timeframes for cover decisions to be made, our cover assessment teams try their best to move these claims through as quickly as possible, and the triage criteria was part of making sure that happened. So claims, as you can see on the screen, claims that meet the criteria under that first section, these will not require ENT input. Claims will be referred to ENT when the risk factors are present. The age calculation is between 4% and 6%, and there's an uncertain work history. The others will be declined. There was a backlog to see an ENT, which did increase decision timeframes, hence the reason we've taken that out of the equation. So with this triage criteria, it reduced the pool needing to see an ENT and thus decrease the decision timeframes. Resources will be sent out at the end of the webinar, which will include a link to our recent webinar, including the triaging information. And as with any other cover decision at ACC, if cover is declined for a hearing loss claim, the client has a right to review this decision. So these reviews evaluate the decision in terms of the legislation and how it's been applied. So for hearing loss claims, that's the 5% threshold. I do encourage you to coach your clients at the first point of call to give ACC a call to discuss and understand that decision further. This often results in a better understanding and no need to pursue a formal review, which can be a timely process. Further to this, ACC may seek further clinical clarification or opinion from an ENT during that review process. So a little bit about providing services as an audiologist. Audiology, along with other services, are slightly different than others that we do have in the pool, in the fact that audiologists operate under the cost of treatment regulations. There are no contracted services for audiology. The cost of treatment regs is reviewed biannually and adjusted according to market analysis and information from various experts. There are a couple of different regulations. So the Accident Insurance Occupational Hearing Assessment Procedures regulations stipulate the standards that need to be met for testing for ACC claims. So the idea around this is to create consistency across assessments and outcomes. The declaration on the ACC 612 that will need to be completed to show that you've met the required standards. So it is important that you do sign that. And most of these standards are already met by the clinics that you work within. So there's no need to worry too much, but it is good to refer back to them so you know what you're needing to meet. The next is the apportioning entitlements for hearing loss regulations. So these regulations stipulate the payments and limitations to treatment that you have as an audiologist. Most services do not have co-payments. Clients may have to pay a portion for the hearing aids themselves, where the cost is more than the funding, which we will go into in the slide next. So the amount we pay is regulatory, meaning ACC does not set the contribution rates themselves for the bands of funding. So you'll see to my right the amounts for monaural and binaural hearing loss percentages. These percentages dictate what band of funding the client will fall into and therefore how much ACC will contribute to the cost of hearing aids. It's important that when you do discuss treatment options with patients and you say ACC contributes to treatment, that you say ACC contributes to treatment. There may be times when clients have to contribute to the hearing aid costs where the quoted amount differs from their allocated funding band. The audiologist that the client will see, so yourselves, is ultimately their choice. You as professionals will build the trust and relationships with these clients, and they trust your recommendations and your advice on the hearing aids and the treatment options that you provide. I'll now hand to Ben to talk to you about getting set up and paid.
Awesome, cheers Cody. So if you're not already registered, everything you need is on our website. So once you are registered, it means you're then able to access our digital services. This makes a lot of things quicker and easier for you. So it's a fairly simple process and our registrations team will help you with this. Your provider ID is really important. It's how we know that you have the right qualifications to work as an audiologist. So the 4 key items on this slide advise what is needed to provide to obtain a provider ID. So aside from filling in new forms, it's incredibly important that you read, you understand, and you complete the onboarding resources so that you understand what your responsibilities are as a provider. So once you have registered as a provider, you'll be able to access our digital services and you'll be able to do all the things listed here, making things faster and easier for you. So you can send in your invoices, you can search claim information, you'll be able to lodge claims and get payment advice. So once signed up, there are 2 ways to connect with us. So one is via your PMS system or your practice management system. The other is by using our online services. So practice management systems can work directly with us for lodging claims, finding claim information or invoice information, submitting invoices and getting remittance advice. So ACC lets PMS vendors know of any pricing or code changes, and they update them on their end. So but it's also important for you to read your correspondence from both us and them and keep your email up to date. If you don't have a PMS system or your PMS does not offer all of our services, you can contact our e-business team to help with our online services. And you can also head to our website for more information on this, and there'll be some more at the end of the slide, the webinar. Getting paid. When submitting invoices, it's best to use your PMS or online services. These are quicker, safer, and prioritized for processing over manual billing. So when you have lodged a new claim, please send in your electronic invoice after the claim is registered and has a claim number. And just a few reminders here. So to keep your information up to date is pretty crucial, so we can keep in contact with you as well. And what we'll do now is we're going to move into the resources we have on offer. So Cody, if you could give a run through these, please.
Thanks, Ben. So we have a range of great resources to help improve your knowledge and support the onboarding of new staff. So these include our online learning modules, quick guides, introductory videos on the basics, webinars like this one that are tailored directly to providers. So check out our YouTube playlist to watch webinars on demand, including Welcome to the Team and Cultural Competency. You can also see what we have coming up next on our website. And here are a couple of resource links that we can send out after the webinar to ensure that you have all the tools at your fingertips in order to support your staff or support yourselves in your learning journey. So what's next? Please take a minute after this webinar to let us know your thoughts. We're particularly interested in what you thought about the format of the webinar, what you liked about it, and how it could be improved for future. Please also let us know if there's any other specific topics you'd be interested in hearing more about. So simply click that link in the chat and share your feedback with us. It is anonymous and it will help us plan for more helpful webinar content in future. A couple of ways to contact us. So for our cover assessment team, a number there, an 0800 number, and our Dunedin hearing loss at acc.co.nz email. If you're wanting to contact myself as health partner or Ben as portfolio advisor, the Audiology advisor inbox is the way to go. Provider registration, so that's when you need to let us know of any of those changes that Ben mentioned. Any contact details that change, please contact registrations. And any billing inquiries, call the 0800 number on screen. Again, this webinar will be sent out and available on our website after the fact, so you can always refer back to it if needed. All right, so it's come time for our questions, and I know that there is a few in the chat, so I might just hand to Maggie to ask them. Thanks, Maggie.
Kia ora, Cody. Thank you so much. Yep, there are some great questions in the chat. The questions have come in obviously as we're talking, so I'm just going to run through them in the way that they came through. So the first question was, how much further noise exposure in years is considered enough to look at reapplying? Thanks, and I think Kelly, you might be able to take that question.
Sorry, I'll just unmute myself. So there's no set amount of years. We'll consider how much longer they've worked and if the hearing loss has changed and has hearing protection been worn. It's possible we may just reconfirm a previous decline decision.
Perfect. There was another question here, probably again for you, Kelly. So this provider's been sending the ACC 612 to Hamilton hearing loss. Should all the applications now be sent to Dunedin? Can you provide some clarity for that?
Yep, so if you could please send them all to dunedin.hearingloss@acc.co.nz, and that email address will come out with this slide pack.
Great, thank you. Let me just grab the next question up for you. So this next one is around lodging a head injury. So could you just confirm that if there is a head injury resulting in hearing loss, we cannot lodge the claim?
So you can lodge the hearing loss claim, but the actual head injury will be outside your scope of practice. So that will need to be lodged by a GP. The GP can also lodge the claim for hearing loss if they were to go there first. So just to confirm, you can lodge the hearing loss, but you can't lodge the actual head injury.
Great, thank you. Hopefully that's some great clarity there.
I might just jump on to the end of that one, sorry.
Ben.
And just say if you do see the client first and you lodge the hearing loss portion of that claim, once that claim is lodged, the client can take that claim number with them to the GP, and then the GP would add the additional diagnosis of head injury to that already existing claim, just so there's no duplication of claims there.
Great, thanks, Ben. There's actually a follow-up question just around which read code should they use for the head injury. So I think that was, you probably answered it in your instructions there, but is there anything else that they need to be aware of?
No, just the head injuries outside of the scope of practice. Yep, so it would just be the hearing loss portion only. Perfect.
Let me find the next question. So, Cody, this is a question around the triaging system. So is it operating already? It was just a question, and I guess this comes as another question around the current decisions timeframe. So is the triage system operating already, and what are our current timeframes looking like? Can we give a broad answer on that?
Yeah, definitely. So yes, the triage system's in process already. The cover assessment team have seen a large increase in the volume of new claims, so they're working their way through these at the moment, which is why you might see an increase in those timeframes. But all in all, the triage system is there to reduce those timeframes. So over time, that's what you'll see.
Thanks, Cody. Another question here around this refers again to your slides, I think, Cody. Can you outline what you consider a risk factor, please? So I'm not sure if that's you or Kelly that's going to grab that one.
A risk factor, Kelly, I might pass to you. Yeah.
So risk factors can be things like working in the New Zealand Defence Force service, significant recreational noise exposure. So for example, they've shot guns, they've played in a band, they've gone to motorsport events. There's a combination of New Zealand work history plus overseas work history, or medical history impacting the hearing loss or ototoxic exposure, things like that are risk factors.
Thanks, Kelly.
Great. There was a question around the trauma claims. Does an audiogram need to be done by a full NZAS member?
Yes.
Yes.
That's a resounding yes from the team. So the next question was, I think hopefully we've covered this one off, which was how are the funding bands calculated, and I think the answer there was around the legislative, but the follow-on question there was, are all the ENT inputs via phone call? I'm not sure who's best placed to answer that one.
So they don't all have to be via phone call. It just makes for a quicker decision with ENTs. We're able to get them in quicker if they can do the assessment by phone. Obviously, if there's other factors that are playing into that client's life and they can't do it over the phone, then we can arrange a face-to-face assessment. It will just potentially be that there will be a longer wait for that, as there's limited ENTs available, and they're not available in all areas of the country as well. So there's areas where no ENTs will complete face-to-face assessments for us. So it is definitely quicker to do them over the phone, but the option is there for face-to-face.
A question here about keeping their providers their provider details updated. What do you suggest for that?
Oh, you go, Cody.
No, you go, Kelly.
I was going to say for
You'll
that.
know better than me.
We need you to keep up to date with us where you're working as an audiologist. So if you have worked in one place and then you've moved to another place, we need you to let us know that via the provider helpline. The reason for that is when we request information, we request it based on where you're working at the time. So we may potentially request information for a client from the wrong place. So it just begins to cause privacy issues. So it's super important for us, and time frame issues. So it's important for us, for you guys to keep the information about where you're working up to date with us, and that's via, again, provider helpline.
Great, thanks, Kelly.
There's also an email for that one, so it's the registrations email, which is on the slide that we passed out later too.
Thank you. There's just a follow-up question that's coming around our ENT consults, and just wanting to confirm that they'd be available via video call for those that need lip reading or closed captioning to assist. So just wanting to check that we have video telehealth enabled for those providers.
I'm not sure that we've ever organised one of those, but I'm sure that's something that we could do. Generally with those, we would try and do a face-to-face assessment. But like we said, there's not ENTs available in all parts of the country. So that's, if they're available to do telehealth, then that's something we could potentially look at, yes.
Great. Thanks, Kelly. I'm just going to jump on to our next few questions. So we just wanted a clarity here around for someone that has been declined with the under 6%, did you say that they're less likely going to be accepted under the new rule of 5%? So that's some clarity about that change in rule from 6 to 5.
So the only time we would reconsider them in this example is if they have continued to work in a noisy environment. So we wouldn't reassess them under the new legislation unless they've continued to work in a noisy environment, and then they would have to have had further injury, so further hearing loss caused from working in that noisy environment for us to then approve that claim under the 5% threshold. So that's the only time we would ever relook at them under both parts of the legislation.
Great, but probably that answers that nicely. So the next one is, this is talking about the band 2 to band 1. So this question is coming out of a few renewal cases where the funding has been reduced from band 2 to band 1. What is the process or criteria around determining the reduction?
So if the client hasn't continued to work in a noisy environment, so say they were retired, but their hearing loss has gone up significantly, it means the percentage of their hearing loss is less from occupational noise than it is from other factors, meaning the total percentage that we would cover is less than we would have covered before. And that's why they've been reduced from one band to the next band, to the band below, sorry.
Thanks, Kelly. There's another question here around percentages, which is said in the slides mentioned that ENT will review a case if the PHL is between 4 to 6%. Does that mean we can lodge claims with over a 4% hearing loss?
No, so we only want you to lodge claims that are over the 5% threshold. If we get it and we apply our triage criteria and it comes in between 4 and 6%, we would send it off to the ENT. But we don't want any claims that are under 5% from you guys. These will be automatically declined from our end.
Thanks, Kelly. Another one here, just bear with me a second. Is there a minimum number of years of occupational noise exposure before you'll consider a claim?
I don't think so, as long as it's been noise exposure in a noisy environment and the audiogram shows a typical pattern for occupational noise-induced hearing loss.
Thank you. There's a couple of questions about hearing aids here. So what happens when someone chooses hearing aids that cost slightly less than the ACC band funding? Does ACC only pay the price of the aids, or do we still invoice for the entire band amount? Don't know if that's one we can answer. Does it happen very much?
I believe we would only pay the cost of the hearing aids.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I think that's correct as well. Yeah, but we can clarify. I'm pretty sure we pay for the hearing aid amount because you'll be sending in the information on those as well. So yes, the amount they cost.
Thank you. And I think I'll just have a read as we're talking through this one, but I think this might be one of our last questions. I've had a client with noise exposure of around 10 years and a trauma, so they were struck in the head. Can we claim for both, and which one should we prioritise?
Yep, so we would consider that a complex case, and we would get that all assessed by an ENT at the same time, and they would tell us how much percentages from the trauma and how much is from the occupation, and we would combine it together. So we would consider those together as a complex case.
Thanks, Kelly. There's a question here around it's another funding for hearing aids. So in which cases are you funding one aid only? Do you know what the criteria are around that?
So it would be in cases, for example, like a trauma claim where they've only had hearing loss in one ear, and they only needed a hearing aid for one ear. That's probably an example of when we would only fund one aid.
Thank you. And then this question is just around clarification for the trauma claims and for the paperwork that we need. Is it just the 612 and the audiogram? Is a PHL calculation or document also required? So what do we need for a trauma claim?
So there is also a trauma questionnaire, which I believe is available on our website as well, that would need completing alongside that, the 612 and the audiogram.
Great. Thanks, Kelly. I've got a question here. Sorry, it's just come in. Could you remind us how funding works for the children's hearing aids if the loss is caused by trauma?
Yeah, I can answer that one. So you just go through the Ministry of Health funding, and we basically would be covering that, but essentially reimbursed through Ministry of Health. So just put it all through Ministry of Health for that one, even if it's trauma. Great.
Thanks, Ben. There's another question that's just popped into the chat here. If we have a client who has worked in noise, but one ear has non-ACC covered cause as well, for example, a conductive loss not caused by trauma, can we just apply for monaural funding? And do we only apply for one side on the ACC 45? So there's a lodgement question and a funding question.
So you would apply as per normal. They would just still need to meet the 5% threshold, even if it's just in one ear. So it still needs to meet the 5% threshold, even if it's just for a singular ear. It would just be considered as, it would be considered as occupational noise, and they just need to meet the 5% threshold.
Okay. There's a question about unilateral loss as a result of trauma here, Kelly. So what if the client only has a unilateral loss as a result of trauma, but the NAL calculation is based on thresholds for both ears and got less than 5%? Should we still put through a claim?
So I think that was covered with what I just said. It still needs to meet the 5% threshold, even if it's just a singular ear. It still needs to meet the threshold. Even if it's just one side.
That's great. Thank you, Kelly. That concludes our questions. Oh, sorry, one last one here for you. For children's hearing aids, would ACC still pay for private fitting costs directly?
Yes. But they normally the children are seen in the hospital, but I'm assuming if they've come privately, then that's fine as well. Yep.
Lovely. Thank you. And that concludes the questions for today, team. So I will just pop into the chat the feedback link again for you so that you can let us know what you thought of the session. There's also an opportunity to let us know if there's any other information or sessions that you would appreciate hearing about.
Awesome. Thanks, Maggie. And thanks, team, for answering those questions. Huge thank you to everybody for putting your questions in the chat there. And a huge thank you for giving us your time today. We really do appreciate you taking time out of your day to come and listen to us speak to you about a few things that may be helpful for you coming into the ACC realm of work as an audiologist. And as Maggie said, feedback is welcomed, so please do take that opportunity. I'll finish us out and close the session with our karakia. Whaia whaia, whaia te tika, whaia te pono, whaia te aroha. Mō te oranga tangata, kia puta ki te whaiao, ki te ao marama, haumie, hui e, tae
Ai
ki.
kia.